Hello, Dan Palmer. I want to thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Greetings, April. My pleasure to be here with you.
One fellow designer to another. What would you like to share with me about your approach to doing a design?
One thing that comes up for me is that I've been reflecting on since a session I had, a gathering I had with a group of fellow designers, was around the distinction between a design process, as in permaculture design process, and a design procedure. And I'm always struggling to find really clear ways of kind of sharing some of the things I'm feeling with my design practice. So if you're up for it, I could explain that a little bit and we could see where that takes us.
I'd love to.
Okay. As you probably know, I'm passionately interested in permaculture design, and particularly permaculture design process. Like, how is it that we go about realizing permaculture's potential? How is it that we get from someone arriving on some land that they want to evolve with and make more productive to being in the game and having some things growing and letting the system continue to evolve? What's the how? And one thing I've noticed is that culturally, and permaculture is part of a wider culture, and so we pick this up from our wider culture, is that we tend to default when we want to do something to a procedure. A procedure is like a recipe or a model. It's a linear sequence of steps. Step one, for example, step one, observe. Step two, design. Step three, implement. Step four, evaluate. You know, just like, or step one, mix the banana and the flour. Step two, add the eggs, that sort of thing. And so we're very geared, actually geared is the right word because it's a mechanical analogy, and procedures are kind of mechanical in the way they work or mechanistic. And so often when I see people talking about process and design process and giving examples of permaculture design process, that's not what they're talking about. To me, what they're talking about is a procedure. And there's nothing wrong with procedures. They're great. Just the other day, I tried cooking something I hadn't cooked before, and I needed a procedure, right?
Yeah.
If I just launched into, I've got myself in a lot of trouble. So I was very grateful. So there's a place and a huge value in procedures. And there's also a huge danger, a huge risk if we mistake procedure for process. And what we can do is if we're attached to a particular procedure, like here's my permaculture design procedure, and it's better than yours and it's better than theirs. And what we're going to do is step one. Oh, you know, we don't want to jump from step 4 to step 6. We need to do step 5 first. What you're doing is you're imposing a procedure. And the more I work and the more I kind of understand what process means for me, process is something that's alive and adapted to the moment. And it's like a constant dance, is that I'll pull in procedures as appropriate, but I'll also be very ready to drop them and let them go and to do whatever is the right thing to do next. I actually came across a beautiful quote about this from Carol Sanford just this morning. I'm reading through her book, The Regenerative Business. She said, processes occur in real time within the changing circumstances of the real world. They are not procedures. One of the unfortunate residues of the mechanistic way of thinking is that, she says, most organizations, but we could say that most of us try to turn processes, which are alive and based on what is happening in the moment, into procedures, which are predetermined. And I love this bit. This excites me, this next bit. Processes require people to be present and awake. Procedures put people to sleep and make them mechanical. Oh, I love that. I love that. You know, I love the idea of processes that mean we're awake and we're conscious and we're aware and we're alive. We don't know what wants to happen next. We're discovering it. One way of thinking about it is helping design or set up processes of coevolution between human health and ecosystem health. These are the kind of processes that humans always stewarded up to quite recently. That entails a fundamental transformation of our entire way of being as humans, the way we think, feel, see, communicate, relate, understand all the big questions about who we are and why we're here and what's the point of it all. And you can't boil that down to a procedure. A lot of the conversation for me is first getting that penny to drop, that this is not a copy and pastable bullet point list that you can just take out whatever you're doing, teaching in your permaculture design course today, drop the list I'll give you in and do that tomorrow. This is a process that will unfold indefinitely, and it will be years before perhaps it really starts to sink in. It's baby steps. It's a big process. At the same time, I have had a lot of conversations with people who say we need procedure. We need procedure. And like I said, procedure is essential, and yet often the procedures we default to are just so infused with the opposite of what I'm talking about. They're mechanical, They're based on a variety of systems thinking that's really about starting with fragmented separate elements and then thinking design is about gluing them together, as opposed to the idea of transforming whole systems and working with all the energies of a place as a coherent whole. The unconscious pattern we have as modern humans of killing life and killing landscapes with our minds, but just simply in the way we perceive them, let alone what we actually do to them. If you're interested in permaculture, you've signed up for some tricky stuff. Permaculture, the stuff we're talking about, it's not rocket science. It's actually a lot more complex than that because it involves soil biota and biology and water flow, and it involves so many different disciplines in a flowing integrated way that it's hugely complex. When you're dealing with any kind of complexity, you can't predict it. No one can predict it. So planning is essential. Plans are useless. We're engaged in planning and we get enough clarity about what it makes sense to do for the next 1, 2, maybe 3 at the outside steps to move. And then of course we'll keep planning because the plan, if we had one, will have changed because things evolve so fast. And particularly when you're dealing with biological systems, with gardens and all that, it has to be a very dynamic, ongoing planning and doing process. No fixed or static plan is ever going to last for that long. And the trap, of course, is if you've got one, you can fall in love with it and continue to force it on the situation, even if the situation's saying, no, thanks, this doesn't work anymore. Things have changed. The climate's changed. The soil's changed. The water cycle's changed.
Wow, that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. These are huge. The possibility of a permaculture-wide initially, but then potentially culture-wide design process transfusion. And I see this as very high stakes. To me, this is closely related to the existential crisis humanity finds itself in, is that unless we can shift out of mechanistic procedures into living processes, we can't actually get to the beautiful, heart-stoppingly beautiful possibilities that permaculture is all about, of getting back into a co-evolutionary dance with the rest of life.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's very powerful.
My pleasure. Yeah, really privilege and honor to be on the show.